I've had this F700 GS for about 2.5 years, primarily off-roading, but it is also my daily driver, so I use it for commuting.
And you commute in DC where it's basically off-roading anyways?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, you're always dodging whatever comes at you, whether it's an SUV or a pedestrian. This one was actually done off-road. Doing parts of the Niebder, I just hit some rocks and lost traction, and the bike and I went completely sideways and had a little bit of grinding action to make sure to shear everything as well as I could.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Nicked Uber Max playlist right here on the MOA's YouTube channel. Today we are going to be digging into this F700 GS. It's got a busted shifter, sort of. The shaft is messed up. We figured it out and we got the parts, and now we're going to replace them. So we're going to open up the side of the engine and show you how that's done. Remember to come back, check out the videos, hit like if you like them, comment, ask questions, subscribe, and if you haven't already, join the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. We're looking for you. And now, over to the bike. So here's the shifter. You can see this is an aftermarket shifter. We're going to be replacing that as well because the teeth that go on the splines of the shift shaft are all chewed up. So as you can see, the owner just rides the absolute piss out of this bike, and she's really hard on it. So this whole thing moves and it's not supposed to, and the teeth are all chewed up. I'll give you some close-ups of those once we get them out. So we got to take this cover off. We might lose some oil. I don't know if we'll drop the oil. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But the cover itself does come off with a little bit of effort. So it's not a miserable job, but it's going to take us a while to get through it. To be able to get this cover off, we've got to take the support for the foot peg off. So this has to come out, and that means, do you think we can get that off without?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the side stand is connected to the plate, so we don't have to disconnect the side stand or the foot peg, just take the whole thing off. Looks like two large, what is that, a T50?
Yes.
Creak. Would those have thread lock on them from the factory?
Probably micro encapsulated.
Gotcha. Which just means that there's a thread lock like substance on the threads of the bolts before they put them in.
Correct.
Oh, I knew it was correct. I was talking to the viewers. It's rare that I actually know something's correct. And we'll have to disconnect the clutch cable too.
The blue.
Yeah, there's the micro encapsulated thread lock. Oops. There's an electrical connector there, the side stand safety switch that's caked up with mud. I guess this is why you should wash your motorcycle, huh? And it's got a little tab. You have to raise the tab. There you go. You have to get in there and kind of disconnect the tab so that it'll come apart.
All right, next up is the clutch cable.
All right. And do you have to loosen it at the handlebar to disconnect it from here?
Should not have to.
Okay. So there's an adjuster or lock nuts. One above and one below. Oops, we're out of frame again. Come on, George, stay in frame. Don't worry about it, keep going. Your cameraman is not doing his job.
I'd fire them.
Is there a trick to getting the clutch cable disconnected?
Well, there is a little safety clip that keeps it from popping off.
Oh, okay.
A little tricky to do without getting my big bald head in the way.
Well, you know, right now we can only see your hands, so. Oh, so there's the little clip. Oh, that's what the little clip is. So that's the clip that secures the clutch cable, the end of the clutch cable.
Must have been part of the kit.
I think it was part of the kit. And just fishing it through so it's out of the way when we take the cover off. Next, the shifter itself is coming off. Since it's already pretty loose, it's not really terribly difficult. What is that, a 4mm hex?
5.
5mm hex. And we're gonna replace this chewed up shifter, aftermarket shifter, with a stock shifter because that's all that we could, the owner couldn't get the shifter that she wanted in time for us to be able to do this, but she can put it on anytime she wants now. And you can, here you can see how chewed up those teeth are. They should be nice and sharp, and they are none of those things. We're pretty sure we can do this without taking the oil out, so we're gonna try it. You want me to get a drain pan just in case?
No, the oil level should be below. Oil levels somewhere around there.
Okay, so we should be able to do this without taking the oil out, which makes things a lot easier.
We will be changing the oil after this.
Anyway.
This is just in case this happens on the side of the road.
And what's that, a
T30.
T30 to get all the case bolts out. And tell me why you're loosening them in the cross star fashion.
Well, there's some crazy tightening pattern to make sure you don't warp stuff. We will pay attention to how we put them back together.
Are we trying to save the gasket?
No. And I'm
Right.
just stuffing a paper towel in there because this bike is exceptionally dirty and I don't want
Sure
any
is.
crunch falling down inside. That's a technical term.
Crunch?
Crunch.
Would you do things different if you were trying to save the gasket?
I would never, well, if I was on the side of the road, I'd try to save the gasket, but other than that, I wouldn't.
Are these bolts, I believe, can I see one?
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the order because these are all the same length. Even if they're dirty, they're all the same length, so they can come out in any order, and they can, and there's like, I don't know, 17 or 18 of them, isn't it? Oh no. While George is taking the rest of those bolts out, this is the piece, the part that we're replacing. You can see it only sticks out this far, and then the shifter goes onto it. But in all likelihood, this is the part that's bent, and that's a thing that happens if you ride these bikes hard and you have adventure boots on and you stomp on your shifter. This piece of metal will deform over time, and then it makes the whole thing loose in the housing. So we'll be replacing this part. And the other two parts that come with it are this stop disc, excuse me, and this shaft seal. So we'll be putting the original clip back on, which is why you should always take things off carefully.
Yep. Somebody lied.
Wasn't me.
A little bit of oil coming out of there.
Looks like it mostly went into the bash plate.
Yeah. Well, the oil level still should be lower than we're saying. Yeah, see, it was just what was caught in the...
Oh yeah, it's just a little tiny bit of oil.
And as you can see, that falls right out.
Yeah, it pretty much does, doesn't it? Yeah, you can see where the oil is down there. Mm-hmm. So, and this is your clutch.
Yep.
There, that comes right out. That was super easy.
And note,
Hold on, you got to get it in the frame. There you go.
this stop disc.
Oh yeah, that stop disc secures against the C clip towards the end of the shaft.
Keeps the circlip from chewing up this housing cover.
There you go. Housing.
Or cover. I guess housing cover's like saying VIN number, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it did not tear the gasket, but we are going to replace it because we have a new one.
When in doubt, gasket it out.
That's right. All one piece.
The old one doesn't actually look too terribly mangled, but it's bent a little bit, and that's why we're replacing it. Plus also the chewed up teeth on the end, because it no longer secures the shift lever. Cleaning up the cover, this hole right here where my pinky is where that was oily, is where the end of the selector shaft goes. And it just slides right in, just like that. It's that easy. This is part 2 of the cleaning.
Now that it's oil free, I'm getting all the dirt that didn't come off.
While George is finishing the cleanup job, there's the new gasket. It comes on a piece of cardboard just to protect it from getting bent or broken in transit. These are, what, 40 bucks?
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
Well, they cost however much they cost, and it's always
subject to change.
subject to change, yes, from year to year. So since we're replacing this seal, we have to get it out of the housing first.
Just taking a screwdriver wrap to protect the housing.
And just tap it on out. And there's the old seal. It's hard to show on the video, but this seal is really, really rigid. It's lost its flexibility. So I'm gonna chop it up and we're gonna take a look at what's inside it. There's a nasty bit of business. There's a cross section of the seal and you can see that there's a piece of metal inside it. Of course now it's deformed because I just cut it. But that's what gives the seal its rigidity and structure.
And there's what's left of the spring that you want to be careful with.
And that's, yeah, there's the spring that's embedded inside there too. So yeah, that went flying when I cut it. Anyway, just a little interesting side note. Make sure you take a minute to wipe off all the mating surfaces where the gasket's gonna go. Did I get it in the right place?
Yeah, I would say that, yep.
Woohoo!
You got the spring on the little rod sticking out?
Yep.
Okay.
Right where it belongs. So we're gonna put it back together first and then put the seal on from the outside. George is getting a little bit of motor oil.
Chances are you can reuse the stop disc, but we're putting a new one in because we weren't sure what kind of condition it was going to be in. A little motor oil on it.
And what's the oil do?
Just helps to give it a little protection before since it'll take a bit for
The oil to
get around.
Other than getting it positioned properly, is there a trick to putting on a gasket?
Well, there are alignment pins.
That's handy.
And we'll see if this one is going to want to behave or not. And it does. Some of them will want to keep falling. You can stick them on with a little bit of 3-bond adhesive or a dab of grease, depending on where the system is. Up here, this is dry, so if this kept wanting to fall, you could put a little grease in there because there's no oil up in that corner.
What's this hole for?
That's the end of the crank. Oil's probably going to come up out of the oil pump there.
Okay.
And feed the bottom end. So it is super critical that you don't block that.
You can tell that because of the shape of the housing, right? This goes right there. So the oil comes out here and goes in there into the end of the crank. Yeah, super critical not to block that spot.
And there is one tricky point with putting this back together. This piece here
It looks a little wiggly.
is a little wiggly and it wants to keep moving. That goes on the...
Oh yeah, you can see it's got a mating surface in there. Oh, here, let me hit it with the flashlight. So you got to get that in the right spot.
You have to make sure it's in the right angle. If it's like that, it's not going to go back together.
A little patience and a little wiggling. Will that shaft come out of the motorcycle?
It can, but it has to go together this way. If you have to replace this shaft, you have to take the cover off and then load it on this way. And you can see that shaft is at an angle. So you have to put this one
At a corresponding angle.
about the same angle.
Will you be able to get the cover all the way on if you don't get the surfaces mated properly?
Probably not. And that is it. That's how you can tell, 'cause that's the clutch
The clutch pushing back at you.
Yep.
And now we got to put the bolts back on. We're not going to tell you what the torque values are on these bolts because you should always look up the torque values for bolts that you're putting on your motorcycle. Even on the same model motorcycle, torque values can vary by year. So you should always, always, always look up the torque values. What does putting the dipstick in do? Does that help hold it all in place?
No. Now if I take this bolt and do that,
it doesn't fall.
It doesn't fall right into the motor.
She's not going to recognize her own motorcycle because it'll be clean on one spot.
There is a particular pattern, and we're not following that pattern right now. I'm just loading them all into holes.
And he's not tightening them all the way down. He's just kind of getting them in position. And you don't go around in the circle because you risk warping the cover.
And you want to make sure that the gasket hasn't slipped.
Right.
And if the gasket slips, it'll stop one of the bolts. It won't let it go in very easily.
Yeah, because you would have to punch through the...
You'd have to push the gasket out of the way.
And you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. That's why you put all the bolts in first, make sure everybody's in a happy place.
And we still have the seal to put in, and that's going to go right here around the shaft in the housing. There is a diagram, and we're going to follow it now that we've gotten the bolts
Oh, we're going to get them all.
sort of on. You just get them down basically finger tight, and then follow the order with a torque wrench to make sure that everything matches up as properly as it's supposed to. All right, here we are with the torque wrench, and this is going to be the most annoying part of the video because it will beep 4, and then this is 13 and 14. Then 15 and 16. Now we got to put the clutch back in, or the clutch cable, excuse me. So we need this clip.
Well, first we got to get the cable back in.
Yep.
This is definitely a beefy clutch cable.
Oh yes, good thinking. Put the lock nut on the cable before you connect the cable to the pull clip. Sometimes on these videos, it's hard to see things with everybody's hands in the way. But once you're working on it and you listen to it a couple times, it makes sense where they are and what they're doing.
And it's harder to work when you're used to having your big head in the way of everything.
Yeah, it's true. Clip in from the backside. Nice catch.
With a little tab on top. That way, cable stays captured.
And remember, you've got lock nuts both above and below the guide. So right now, you can't really see it, but George is setting the free play on the clutch cable.
See how that snaps back? That tells you that you got the clutch in the right position.
And except for putting the seal back in, I think we're pretty close to done.
Yep.
Oh, we got to put the foot peg bracket on too. That'll be important. So now George is just tightening up the lock nuts. I kind of got in there. I'm pretty excited about this next part. There's the new seal. And when you a lot of people put seals in with sockets. You just got to get one the right size. And it will keep oil on the other side of that, which is where you want it.
I'm going to take a little bit of motor oil. Just wet the lip with it. Since we're making this video to show you how to do it at home, we're using the handyman secret weapon.
Duct tape.
Duct tape.
Is that to protect the teeth?
Right, because those little teeth are sharp and can cut the seal to bits.
Gotcha.
You still have to be careful when you work it on that you don't pop that little spring off.
Come a little closer.
That little spring in there.
Okay. Because that's the thing that keeps the seal a seal.
Right. That's why as I put it in, I'm kind of starting on the bottom and then rolling and twisting.
Gently, gently.
Once you get it started about flush,
It almost goes in with hand pressure.
this one. And since this one won't, you just take a socket that's the same outer diameter as the seal, but a little smaller than the housing,
Tap it in.
and just tap it in. Trying to make sure it gets square in there.
Will you be able to feel when it's seated? Or because it's rubber, does it take up the slack?
Well, as we should have told people to note, the install depth of this seal is flush with the housing,
Okay, which is where it is.
which is where it is. And that's a very critical thing. Before you take anything apart, take pictures, take measurements, note seal depths. Some seals are below grade, some seals are proud.
meaning
they're above
they stick
the
out.
surface.
But that is the hard part's over. Now with the installation of the
Take that
seal,
off.
so all we got to do now is fit the new shifter and reinstall the foot plate.
And since these have Loctite on them, or micro encapsulation, I like to run them through once, clean them off. Woo!
That's all you get. The plate's pretty thick.
That. No, is that? I don't know if you can see that.
Threads buggered up.
No, that bolt is bent.
Oh yeah, there it is. So right there is probably the proximal cause of why the shaft needed to be replaced in the first place. And that's just a function of the owner and how hard she rides this bike. Foot peg mounting bolt is bent. We didn't have any more of these lying around, but we have a bolt that's the same diameter and thread pitch. It's just a little bit longer. So the thing you always have to be careful of when you use a bolt longer than the original is what's behind the fitting. So there's nothing back here. You can see my finger. Hello. There's nothing back here to get in the way of the bolt. So we can use a slightly longer bolt without causing any problems.
Run it in just to clean out the
Threads?
old threads.
Are you gonna put thread lock on that?
Yes, I'm going to use blue Loctite.
Blue Loctite, which
I'm going to use a blue thread sealing chemical.
is removable with standard hand tools, and you don't need heat, correct?
Correct.
Is that cleaner or lubricant?
It is cleaner. Audio check.
All right, here we go. We're putting the plate back together. But first, note the connector for the side stand safety switch. We put a little dielectric grease in there, which helps seal it against weather, and it's conductive, so it helps maintain the connection between the pins and the pins. Yeah, you do have to put it in the right way.
You have to put it in the right way. Do not force it. There we are.
Here, let me hold that for you.
You hold that.
And the foot peg plate itself is not threaded, so it's just the mount that's threaded.
A little bit of blue locking compound.
This is all chewed up. She rides her bike so hard. Poor bike.
You wish you rode like this, girl.
Oh man. And then all that's left to do now is put the new shift lever on. So this is the stock shift lever. You can see this is where the pinch bolt goes. And then here's the toe thingy that doesn't look directional, so I'm just gonna jam it on there. So there's the stock shifter. And the kit does not come with a pinch bolt. So we're gonna dig up a suitably threaded pinch bolt to go in there. Here you can see the nice sharp teeth compared to the fragged out shifter that has mostly rounded out teeth. And that's what started this whole thing. So we'll adjust this to where the customer wants it when she comes to pick the bike up. But I know she wears adventure boots, but she has fairly small feet. So this just presses in and then it's held in place with a pinch bolt. What I should have done was taken a picture of where her aftermarket shifter was, because this one, it looks like it's shorter. And it is absolutely shorter than stock. Or yeah, it's shorter than the aftermarket one. So we're all done replacing the shift selector shaft on this F700 GS. The owner just rides the crap out of it, and she probably dropped it on the left side, or more knowing her, she probably just crashed it on the left side, which then, affected the original shifter, which she replaced. Then it loosens up a little bit over time. Maybe she didn't check it as often as she should, or didn't put thread lock on the pinch bolt, and it ate away at the teeth on both the shift lever and the selector shaft. The owner of this bike rides it so hard, it's got grass buried in it. And you can see where her highway peg snapped off. She must have dropped the bike. So all that had to be replaced, but you saw it was a pretty easy job. It really didn't take all that long. It would have taken less time for George to do it by himself without me helping or filming and making him stop and do things over and point out things and explain things. This is a, what do you think, George? This is a 1 hour job? Yeah, so about a 1 hour job if you have some peace and quiet and the right tools and all the parts that you need at hand. I would recommend that if you ride your bike hard, and you know you do, if you have to do a job like this, you go ahead and get new foot peg plate mounting bolts, because as we found, one of them was bent pretty good. We were not gonna put that back in, and we kind of had to scramble around because we didn't think of that, and so we didn't order a new one. We did have an extra one, just a little bit longer, but that required a little more due diligence to make sure that it didn't contact anything on the far side of the connector or the mounting hole. So it's better to be prepared and have too many parts than not enough. Be sure to check out the videos, the other videos here on Nicked Uber Max. All BMW all the time, or at least BMW adjacent, BMW relevant. Give us a like if you like the videos, comment, ask questions, subscribe. Check out BMW Motorcycle Owners of America at bmwmoa.org, and come back for more in the next video. Thanks for joining us. You ain't right, man.